Hi, today we'll be looking at the positions where both sides queen their pawns but only one side wins. In this position, we could see that a pawn race where both pawns go all the way to the very end leads to a skewer on either queen g6 or queen h7. So obviously black cannot just push his pawn all the way to the end. He will try to stop it after g4. He'll play king d4, and the idea is to go to d5 and then blockade the pawn. But then after g5, king d5, king f5, king d6, king f6, there's no way for the black king to get in. King d7, g6, king e8, g7, and the pawn gets the queen. So that's the basic example of what can happen when both sides queen. One of them gets skewered, like we've seen in the previous examples. Here is a somewhat more complicated position. We would love to queen our pawn, but it's too far behind. It can't walk all the way here because that would take 5 moves, and he would get to queen before we get to queen, and it's not really good because that's going to end up being a draw. So we have to stop this pawn from promoting, and the way to do that is by playing king d5. See, we can't play king f5 because then we would be out of the square of this pawn after a4, and the square is just too small, we'll never catch up. So king d5 is the only move, and now black can try, because black's pawn is going to get captured on the a file. He's going to try to play a4, but then we play king c4, and black is basically forced to play king d2 or king e2, attacking our pawn. But then we just, for example, after king d2, then we would just play, after a4, king c4, king d2, we just play d4, and there's no way for him to catch up. King c2, king b4, and we win, or a3 and king b3. So it's losing for black. So he can't just play a4 right away. He's going to attack our pawn by playing king d2, or he could play king e2. Now these are both variations to look at because they're both different ideas. So after king d2, then you have king c4, making sure you're in the square of the pawn after it goes to a3. So king c4, king c2, d4. Now black is committed to promoting this pawn, but the problem is that that's going to take him 1, 2, 3, 4 moves, and also he has to play king b2 first, so that's going to be 5 moves, and we only need 4 moves to promote. So king b2, and by the math, 4 moves for us to promote, 4 moves to him to promote. It's going to be queening at the same time, but there's a finesse at the end. After e5, a4, e6, a3, e7, a2, e8 queens, a1 queens, and now you can just trade queens. After queen h8, check, king b1, queen takes a1, king takes b1, and you just win the f pawn, and you just promote the f pawn to victory. So he can't play king d2, he has to play king e2. So king d5, king e2, and now we have to play king c4. So he'll play king f3, and we can't capture this pawn because that's 2 moves, and then he can just play king f3 followed by king f4 followed by king e3. So we have to push our pawn. King d4, king takes f4, and now king e5. Sorry, king takes f4 and d5. Now king e5 and king c5. We're committed to promoting our pawn, and the reason why we're committed to promoting our pawn is that if either pawn promotes. For example, if the a pawn promotes, then there's a skewer at the end after queen h8 check. Or if this pawn promotes on f1, then you have a skewer because there's a barrier by the king, and you could just play queen to f8 check, queen to e8 check, followed by queen to f7 check, or queen to f8 check, whichever one, followed by winning the queen on f1 because the king's too far away. He'll have to play king f4, and he is one rank too far away. Let's see that one in action. So f4, d6, f3, d7, f2, d8 queens, f1 queens, queen to e8 check, king to f4, queen to f7 check, king to g3. He's one rank too far. This would work if the king was on g2. And now we win. And you can check for yourself that the skewer happens when you try to promote the a pawn. So after king d5, a4, okay, so king e2, okay. So the only other try is to blockade the pawn. So you have king f6, and now if you play d6, his only move would be either king e6, but that's a waste of a tempo, or he could play king f7. In either case will be fine. King f7, king c6, king e8, king c7, and we promote the pawn. In this next example, we have kind of a problem because he has a passed pawn, but we don't. Now he's threatening to promote this f pawn, but not really because we're in the square. Now we need to create a passed pawn, and one of the problems is that this is a rook pawn. So if the black king can get to a8 on time, then he'll be able to blockade the pawn. And like I talked about in the blockade with the rook pawns in the third video, then, or actually I have another video on rook pawns, then you'll see that rook pawns are only worth like half a pawn. But here, if the king isn't in the square of the pawn, which we see that it could get in the square, then it's really not worth it. But we have a cool trick, because after b4, a takes b4, a5, now it's not in the square anymore. So all we need is one move for it to get away from the square, b4. And now he has to play king e7. But now instead of taking the pawn, which would be a fatal blunder because the king is in the square, and he would just blockade or capture both pawns. For example, mistake a5, b takes a5, king d6, a6, king c7, and the pawns are going to get captured. a5 or blockaded, king b8, and there you have it. He could just, instead of taking the pawns, he could just sit on a8 and a7 forever, or c8. So b4, king e7, and now we play b5. And this is a protected passed pawn. It can never be captured, and the black king can never go to the 4th rank because then it'll be out of the range of this pawn. It'll just run away. So our next plan is to capture this pawn. King d6, king e2, king e6, but not king e5 because of king f3, and king f5, the pawn runs away. It's out of the square. Or actually, it will be out of the square because the black king is not in the square after b6, and it cannot get into the square. So with the black king to move, he has to be in the square, so you can't play that variation. He has to play king to e6, and now the thing is that he doesn't really have any more moves, because after king f3, king e5, now we can't just try b6 right away because of king d6, but we can just outflank him we can attack from the side and then followed by an attack on the rear. So as you can see, we started attacking by the front, but now we're going to attack by the side and then eventually by the rear. It's just like enveloping that pawn, like a hurricane envelops the land that we live in. So king g4, king e4, and now you see that he is in the 4th rank, so he's going to have to allow this pawn to promote. b6, f3, b7, f2, b8 queens, f1 queens, and now we see that we have a problem because after queen to e8 check, then he has king to d4, and it's going to be a bit hard to force a queen trade here. We can use this pawn to protect our queen and force a queen trade. For example, if the king were on well, that doesn't even work yet because this king is too close to the pawn. But what we can do here is we have a little bit of a trick. After f3 we don't play b7, but we play king g3, and that brings the king closer to the end of the board. So after king g3, king f3, b7, f2, and now we don't play king g2 because of king e2, b8 queens, and then he queens with check. So that's ugly. So we'll just leave it like it is, and we'll queen ourselves, b7, f2, b8 queens, f1 queens, and now we can force a queen trade here by queen e5 check. And he only has a few moves only. He can only play king d2 because of the skewers that happen after king d3. For example, king 2. Oh, he can't even play king e2 because the queen's in the way. So king to d3 is a basic skewer after queen b5. So the only move here is to play king d2. But now we can really force the queen trade because after queen b2, then he only has a couple of moves now. He can go back. So that's still too much freedom. The idea is basically that we can also fork him right here after capturing this pawn. So we'll capture the pawn right now, and we capture it with check, so that's important. That means that his queen doesn't have any time to check us, for example with queen g1 or even queen e1. So we took the pawn with check, and then after, right now he only has a couple of moves, so he can't move here to the light squares because of queen b5 followed by the queen capture and then just promoting the pawn. So right now he only has he has a king to e3, king to d1, king to c2, and lastly he has king to c1. So we just basically have to calculate this. So we'll start with king to e3, and king to e3. Let's see for a moment what could possibly happen. So the idea is to force a queen trade here. And we can force a queen trade by the following maneuver. Queen to e5. Now that we have this pawn captured, he can't play king to d2 because of queen to f4, trading queens and promoting the pawn. The king would need to be in the 3rd rank right now to catch up to the pawn. But as it is, he's not. So he can't play king to d2 here. And he can't play king to d3. He's out of moves. So king to e3 is a bad move. That means that right now he only has king to d1. He only has king to d1, king to c1, and king to c2. So suppose that he moves king to c2. Now this makes our job a lot easier, because here we have a variation where we can get the queen here or the queen here, and it's sayonara. So let's see what the variation would be for that. So think about it for a minute. If the king gets on the B file, then we play queen to B5, winning. If the king gets on D3 or E2, we trade queens and that wins. So after queen to C5, after queen to C5, he can only play king to D2 or king to D1. Obviously not king to D2 because of the queen trade. So he can only play king to D1. And now we can approach, because after queen to D4, king to C1, queen trade. Actually, that wins immediately. King to E1 is a queen trade, and he's out of moves. King to C2, queen to F2. And basically, we just proved that king to C2 is a losing variation because of queen to C5. So you can only play king to C1 or king to D1 right now. So we only have to analyze king to C1 and king to D1. So let's see. Let's think about it for a minute. It's the same thing. We play queen to B5. It's the same thing as if he played king to C2. He can't go here because of queen B5. He can't go to king D2 because of queen to F2 check. And these are illegal. His only move is king to D1, but then we just play king to D4 again. Same thing as before. So his only move is king D1. And now we can transpose just as before to queen to D5 check. And now he can't play there. He can play king to E1. He can play king to C2, but that transposes to the queen C5 variation. So that's illegal, or it's losing. King to C1 is the same thing. It's losing because of queen C5 transposing. That's illegal. His only move is king E1. So you see, that's how you do process of elimination with these sorts of things. When you have a lot of variations to work out, they tend to transpose into each other, at least in pawn endings. So now you can just play queen to E4 check, and you can't play king to D2 because of queen F4. So that's illegal, or it's losing. And king to D1 loses to queen B1 check. So that's it. That's the example. So just one more time. At the very end, so B4, king E7, B5, and after the queen, you see that we make sure that we can get the king to farther away from the passed pawn, and therefore at the B6, F3, king G3, king E3, the pawns promote, and then we just compress the king with the queen E5 check. Queen E5 is so important, and also taking this pawn with check is important too. Last puzzle is this one. Actually, I think I have two more. Whoops, hold on. Let me fix that. My flashlight. Why not? So we have over here. Okay, yeah, we're good to go. So right now we have a different puzzle, and Right now he's threatening to promote this b pawn, but we're also threatening to promote our f pawn, and they're both going to get to do so on time. This is not a threat, because that's why we shouldn't play something like king to g7. Actually, after king g7, it's a complete draw because of king b3, and then the pawns push forward, f6, b3, f7, b2, f8 queens, and then b1 queens, and then I mean, there's really nothing here. But if the king was on e5, it's a different story. Let's see what happens. King to e5, and if black tries the same thing as before, king to c3, then we push the pawns f6, b3, f7, b2, f8 queens, b1 queens, and now we have a nice little trick here after queen to c8, and not king to d3 because of queen f5, or king to d2, and then we have let's see what happens after king d2. I think I like the compression of queen c5 check better. Now he can only play king to d3, although he could try king to d2 also. So let's look at both. After king d2, we have queen to d4 check, and that forces a trade of queens. So you can check it for yourself, but it totally forces a trade of queens. I mean, I'll show you a quick example. Queen c5, king d2, queen d4 check. It's always good to use compression. King to e2. I mean, you have queen to e4 check, trading queens, or some sort of skewer. So I like queen c5 check. That's what happens. So maybe he can try moving the king to c4, and then after f6, b3, f7, b2, queens, queens, we have our skewer. Queen f8, queen c8 check, king to d3, queen f5. But as you get more experience, you can deduct moves immediately. For example, you see that after queen c8 check, it's clear you're going for the skewer here. So he can't go there. This is illegal, and that's gonna lose, and these are all. So he's totally lost. If you can make a red square in your games just like this, and when you're playing your opponent, you're going to have a good time. So he can't play king c4. He can play king c2. It's the last try, but of course we've seen that loses to a skewer. If king a3, then white queens would check. So king a2, then we play queen to a8 at the very end, followed by queen to b8. Same thing for king a4. So clearly he can't try to promote his pawn. He has to try to stop ours. And to be honest, I have no idea how he's going to do that. King e5, he can't do that. So it looks like that's it for this example. Maybe I'm missing something. Hold on. For example, maybe there's a line I missed. Okay, so king e5, king c3, now f6, b3, f7, b2, queen, queen, and now king c5, king to d3, and king d4, king e2, Okay, so the puzzle's actually not over. After queen to e4, check, then queen takes e4, and here is the problem. Okay, now this passed pawn actually does become a threat. So we should decide whether we can take with the king or with the pawn, and our pawn is being attacked. That means that the king doesn't have to move. If we take our if we take the king with the queen, then if we take the queen with the king, then h5, and if we push our pawns, he's going to queen with check. Not good. Check it out. King e4, h5, f4. Now it's his move, so he's going to queen first. We're both on our fourth ranks, but he queens with check. H4, f5, h6, h3, f6, h2, f7, and queen with check. So bad. So h5 is a threat. So we try to catch the pawn, h4, king g4, h3, and that's a draw. So we cannot take with the king. We take with the pawn. And now if king e3, king f5, and we're gonna queen with check first of all. And second of all, he has to try to promote his pawn by moving out of check, but that loses immediately. And that's totally winning. But we do see that he does have a rook pawn, but we just play queen a8 at the end. And I want to see if I'm still missing something. And it does look like I'm missing something. So after king e3, he doesn't play that. He plays king f3. And now if king f5, then there's no queening with check. So h5, but all is not lost. e5, h4, h6, h3, e7, h2, queen. Ooh, so you can see that he can't queen because of the skewer. He plays king g2. Like we talked about before, rook pawns are drawing, but we have a cool trick up our sleeve, king g4. And I've gone over this checkmating pattern before in one of my videos. Or maybe I haven't, but I'm going to make a video on that on the next video. So king g4, queen h1, the pawn moves to h1 and queens. And now it looks like that it's going to be a draw, but the queen can't go anywhere. In fact, it can only go, it's only threaded, so queen d1 check, and we can stop that by playing queen to d2. His only move is king to g1 and king g3, and like we say in Spanish, está cabalito. The queen can't go anywhere, and we're going to play queen f2 in the next move. And there's no chance of a stalemate. For example, queen h3 check, king takes h3, king h1. There's a stalemate only if the queen's on f2. And now we have the last puzzle. This one's actually easy. So we have a pass pawn, but he also has a pass pawn. And we basically can't queen at the same time. Because first of all, even if all the pawns went at the... Oh wait, well, here's the thing, right? We're both gonna queen, but he queens with check. Not good. So we can't let that happen. And I mean, at the very end, we could play something like king c2, and then he can play king a3, and then we can queen hitting a3. But that's why he doesn't do that. He's going to play king b5 right now. For example, f4, king b5, and he's in the square of the pawn. So it's not gonna work. King d4, king c6, king e5, king d7, and he's gonna be able to blockade successfully. So we can't allow it to happen. We play king c6, and now b5. He's got 4 moves, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4. Our pawn's going to be on c7 when we when he queens, and that's not going to be a draw, unfortunately, because the king is too close. So king c7, b4, f5, b3, f6, b2, f7. Oh, actually, yeah, exactly. So weak queen, and yeah, so that's not gonna work. So we can't play f4. We have to stop that king to b5, king to d4, and now king b5, king to d5, and that resumes the promotion. His last try is king to a6. It looks outlandish, but let's see. He would, after king a6, h4, would he be in the square? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, he would be because of king b7. You see what I did there? I did something very weird. I actually played the square as if it was starting on f3, but pawns can hop forward too. So this is incorrect. You actually have to start the square from not where the pawn is, but one in front when the pawn's on f2. King a6, and now we can, let's see. So we're gonna force the king onto c8, and queen will check. f4, king b7, f5, or actually no, he can play king to c7 here, so that's not good. f6, yeah, no. After king b7, we have to play king d6, king c8, now king e7, and we're gonna queen with check. So that works out. King a6 is refuted. So he has to go back to king a4, and now f4, b5, f5, b4, and like I said, we're gonna lure the king. So king c4, b3, and now king c3, king a3, f6, b2, f7, queens, and we're gonna queen with check. Now a4, because of checkmate. So on a8, king a4, but he loses the queen. Queen a8, king b5, queen b8 check. So that's it on pawn endings where both sides queen but one side wins. But I do have some checkmating patterns that I'm going to go over on the next video, which you'll be able to see because you've seen the example of this video, so I'll go more into detail in the next one. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and feel free to donate. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. The link is in the description for donation.